I want to say welcome to all of you joined the call so far. A warm welcome to all you POW people, outdoor people, and guests to our third session of Power of Knowledge, our scientific workshop series. It's great to see this international, these all international people here. And today, our topic is climate change from a business perspective. We have three speakers today. It's Markus Frischhut, Stefan Angermüller, and Gerald Morgner. I want to give you a quick introduction of all of three of them. First, Markus. He's a member of the POW Science Alliance, Jean Monnet professor at the Management Center Innsbruck, and also study coordinator for EU law. He is our expert on European law, values, and ethics today. Very nice to have you here. And then we have Gerald and Stefan. They are both business partner in GWP. They are common good business partners. GWP advises in the companies, people, and organizations for whom responsible businesses and sustainability are particularly important. So Stefan and Gerald are answering the question why we need an alternative economic system today to us. Very exciting question, and it's great to have you here, all three of you, and we are looking forward to hear your presentations and get a new perspective from you. Just an organizational advice at this point. This time, all of you have the like in the last sessions, you have the possibility to ask questions. Of course, we would like to ask that you ask the questions in the end of the presentations. We have 15 minutes for that. And during the presentations, if you have questions already, put them in the chat. We collect them there. Stefan and me, we are checking the chat answering the questions afterwards. I think it's time to start. Markus, you can go and start with your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thanks a lot for the invitation. So if we would like the three of us to tell you a little bit more about the business perspective, I give you an additional one, the EU law perspective, which will explain some theoretical basics where Stefan and Gerald will then continue for more practical issues. So very briefly to mention that those activities are also part of this Jean Monnet chair. And talking about different perspectives, I don't know if any one of you has ever come across this concept of the triple bottom line. So the idea not only to focus on an economic perspective, but also a social one, and also not to forget about the environment. So I think the one topic that keeps most of us busy, or where we are, I think, worried about. And of course, social can also include the legal perspective. You can also add that as another one, but so that's the overall context. So as Mats mentioned, so I'm working in the field. I've studied law, and I'm working in the field of EU law. So briefly to tell you how this topic has developed at an EU level. So and I will tell you in a minute what that is. Companies need to do some financial reporting. There was a directive from 2006, which was amended in 2013. And already before our topic has emerged, corporate social responsibility was an issue at European level, although not in terms of a legally binding document. And also SMEs and the fact that small and medium-sized enterprises cannot deal with as many bureaucratic challenges as big companies, that was also an issue. So that has to be kept in mind, and I will come back to SMEs and CSR, corporate social responsibility, later on. So that's the background when in 2014 financial reporting was also extended to non-financial and diversity reporting. So let's say also our topic of protecting the environment, and it was integrated by amending this 2013 directive. So now that legal framework covers financial and non-financial reporting. As I will tell you in a minute, EU directives have to be implemented in international law. So that was 2016. So whenever you hear about a topic at European level, if it's a directive, you will hear about it in the news, and only roughly 2 years later, it will be legally binding in member states. So therefore, there's some time for preparation, if you like. Our topic also has to be seen against the background of some impact of the United Nations, which is referenced here. And so after in 2016, that became legally binding. The European Commission has issued 2 guidelines how companies should report. And if I may very briefly mention at this stage, so this presentation can be made available, and in this presentation there will also be more slides, and all the screenshots and all those documents are then directly linked via hyperlink to the original document. So whatever information you need in terms of further reading, that will be available later on. So again, important for our topic, there was then another guideline on climate-related information. So as you can see, the one from 2017, the second one from 2019. And that's not the end of the story, because almost exactly 1 year ago, the European Commission has proposed changing the current framework. So has adopted a proposal for a directive amending those existing rules. So what you can see here on the upper part of the slide. So let me very briefly tell you how decisions are made at European level. Sometimes also have discussed that with Mo from POW Austria. And I think for whatever topic, it's also, I think, important to know how that process looks like. So if we have here this directive, the current framework, and this proposal, so as you can see at the bottom of this slide, at the beginning, we always have a proposal of the European Commission. So they are the one institution in charge of making proposals for new legislation. And then, like in the national parliament, we have 2 chambers of a parliament, if you like. The one is actually called European Parliament. The second one has a maybe a little bit confusing name. It's called the Council of Ministers. So, for example, where environmental ministers meet. But again, those 2 institutions can be compared to the 2 chambers of a national parliament. In the end, also important to mention, we have the European Court of Justice. Whenever there is any dispute, who will then decide how the law should be interpreted. I think it's also important to know that all this information, apart from the direct hyperlinks that you can find in this presentation, that all this information is openly and freely available at the website of the European Union. More precisely, the legal database. So it's all available. It's also, I can tell you, becoming more and more user-friendly. And so there you can access also now this proposal. So if anyone is interested how the topic is going to develop, it's all documented. I can also say more user-friendly than at national level. And so you can there find the proposal and a proposal for a directive. So what I've just mentioned. So what is an EU directive? So that what you can see here, that's the current legally binding framework. Again, at the end of my presentation, I will also tell you about the upcoming changes. I think that's also interesting. So if we have the law of the European Union, so if there's an EU directive that's not directly addressed at citizens, at companies, but those directives are addressed to the member states, and then it's up to Sweden, Germany, Austria, all the others to implement that into national law, and it's only then this national law which is binding on you. So therefore, if you hear, for example, now the Digital Services Act having been adopted, so then it becomes law, but you will then look into, so in this case, in case of this directive, you need to see what are the rules in the various countries of the European Union. And so if you can access the text of, for example, the existing document, you can also see where this document has been implemented in the various countries. And for example, here you can see where this directive has been implemented into Austria, for instance. So you can see the law about sustainability and diversity reporting and mentioning certain laws. So again, it's all the information is available. And so if what I will mention in the following, if you're interested in that, please be aware of the fact that if you are, like mentioned here, from Poland or from other countries, you have to look into the relevant national legislation. So in the following, let me give you a brief overview on the existing legal framework before then in the next step, I'm going to tell you a little bit about upcoming changes. So this directive, which is not binding on all companies, and I will mention that also later on. So this directive is applicable to some large companies. And second, it does not prescribe a single specific standard. And one standard, which I deem very important, will afterwards be presented by Gerald and Stefan. So while this directive mentions some examples, ISO and others, it also states that companies, quote, may rely on national frameworks, union-based frameworks, or international frameworks, or other recognized international frameworks. So there is not a single standard, and that's going to change, but there's some flexibility. And so according to those EU rules, there's one concept, the common good matrix, which lies at the heart of the common good balance sheet, and which is also based on certain values, as you can see in the following, which are also can be identified at European Union level. So what this, again, not financial, but non-financial and diversity reporting directive foresees is the obligation for certain large undertakings. So that's, again, more narrow than what you can find below. So those rules apply for large companies, and even for a smaller group of companies, they also have to report on certain diversity related issues relating to age, gender, and so on. But I think what is more important for us is here those three topics. So let me start at the bottom. So human rights, anti-corruption, bribery issues. Also bottom left, social and employment related matters, as mentioned here. And to go to the top, because again, that's interested for POW members. As regards environmental matters, details of current or foreseeable impact of an undertaking's operations on the environment, also related to health and safety, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, and so on and so forth. So Environmental issues, they are not the only subject, but one of 3 fields displayed here in terms of those 3 boxes. So obviously there are at least 2, Stefan and Gerald, who are experts in this field of the common good matrix. So I will not, I will leave that to them, but I will just, I would like to talk about this topic briefly from my perspective. So they will present that in more details. And the idea, as also mentioned in this publication referenced here on the bottom, so the idea is that in the business world, similar values should be honored as in the constitutions of democratic states. And so these values have been identified in a bottom-up way based on legal comparison. And so that's what they have identified in various countries. And now the reason why I got interested in the topic is because those values defined or identified in various countries can also be found at the European level. So there are very strong similarities with the values of the European Union. And the idea, as mentioned in this publication of Felber and Heindl, is that the content of those values should also be filled with life by those who are affected via democratic decisions. So again, bottom up. And so that should be an ongoing and dynamic process. I will skip that. And as I mentioned before, there are now 2 guidelines. Again, one a general one, and the second one there on more environmental specific, which explain you or which give you further information how under the current system, and again, I will then also tell you about the upcoming system, how the current situation looks like and how companies should deal with that reporting obligation. So as is mentioned here, companies are required to disclose relevant, useful information. However, as you can see in the second bullet point, there is some flexibility to disclose relevant information in the way deemed most useful. And you can imagine that while flexibility, of course, sounds always great, but flexibility can also lead to more diversity, and here now diversity in the way how information is presented, which of course can make it more challenging to compare this information. Better for companies, but maybe not so good for civil society, NGOs who would like to compare this information. As you can, I don't want to go too much into the other details. So maybe just to mention that there should be a fair consideration to favorable and unfavorable aspects. Like in scientific work, that information should be presented in an unbiased way, that as always in life, facts should be differentiated from views or mere opinions, that such documents should use plain language, avoid boilerplate, and so on and so forth. And again, 3 topics: environmental information, human rights, and anti-corruption issues. So again, the possibility also here to avoid commercially sensitive information. So again, giving flexibility to companies, but information has to be useful to stakeholders, to civil society, who should be able to access this information. As I mentioned before, if I just go back, so we have those 3 topics: environment, human rights, anti-corruption. The diversity aspect, as you can see here, only applies to certain large listed companies, but as we focus on environmental issues, I will skip that. And so second document, the guidelines from 2019 on climate-related information. You can see that that's an additional information to the 2017 document. And there's a reference to what has recently been discussed. We've also discussed that with Mo, this framework for a taxonomy, which has also been criticized and which has been a lot in the media. And obviously, always important, but especially for this topic, it's important that companies need to ensure that climate-related reporting is regularly updated and in line with the latest scientific evidence. And it's not the intention of these guidelines to encourage a standalone climate report, but rather to integrate that into the other existing information, so to encourage to integrate climate-related information. So that's very briefly the status quo, and also to tell you like which new development is in the legislative pipeline, so to say. So we have this on the top right-hand side, again, this proposal almost exactly 1 year ago to amend this existing framework. And again, to give you a little bit of background, there was a resolution, so political document of the European Parliament on sustainable finance. So that is a little bit the framework which explains you why this proposal went in a certain direction. We have this document on a capital markets union, and we have another resolution on sustainable corporate governance. And that's a little bit the framework against which this, or the background against which this document has to be seen. And I think that's a very important quotation from this proposal, that the guidelines have not sufficiently improved the quality of information companies disclose according to this non-financial reporting directive, end of quote. So as always, at European Union level, documents are regularly reviewed if they're still fit for purpose. And here, as I have already mentioned before, it was seen that that was not really the case. So what does this new proposal, again, which is on its way, it's in the legislative pipeline, so not yet adopted, but just to give you an idea in which direction this will go in the future. So you have to see this new document against the background of one of the priorities of the von der Leyen Commission, which is the Green Deal, which affects various topics, but in this context also non-financial reporting, which, next bullet point, is also changed now in terms of terminology. So now we talk about sustainability information and not about non-financial information. So again, non-financial reporting has to be seen against how that topic has developed, but now it gets a new label, and now we talk about sustainability information. There are also various directives which are put together, but again, I guess that's not so relevant at the moment. So to give you here at the bottom of the slide, very briefly, 4 ideas what's going to change. So there will be an extent, or the new approach consists of extending the scope of reporting requirements and also companies that have to report. So the number will increase, as you will see also in the following. And also to specify more in detail information that companies have to report, and also to require a mandatory EU sustainability reporting standard. And the idea is also to ensure that all information is published as part of companies' management reports, and that this should be disclosed in a digital and machine-readable format. So very often you can provide information, but if you cannot access it in a digital way, it's of course harder to compare that. And so that's one idea of this new proposal. So what does that mean, extension of scope? So like more companies which should be affected. So this document of the European Commission estimates that while there would be currently there are roughly 11,600 companies, so that in the future it would be roughly 50,000 companies that need to report sustainability information. Of course, there's way more information, but I've cut it down to our topic of climate change or environmental protection. So in terms of climate related information, users should know about the undertaking's physical and transition risks, also about their resilience to different climate scenarios, also including greenhouse gas emissions. And it's also mentioned that users need reliable information, and that the new reporting obligations should both reflect on the impact of environmental changes on the company, but also the other way around, the impact of the company on the environment. So it's both dimensions should be covered. And the idea is, third bullet point, to go from voluntary guidelines to a mandatory regime. So as I mentioned before, there's evidence indicating that non-binding guidelines did not have enough impact as they're voluntary, so that there is a need for more mandatory common reporting standards, and also to guarantee that the information is actually comparable. And I already mentioned this double, as it's called, the double materiality principle, sorry. So again, to show the impact of the company on the environment, but also of environmental issues on the company. And as I also already mentioned, digitalization, so information needs to be provided in machine readable format, so XHTML format, so that the information can really be compared. So that's very briefly the theoretical framework from my side, and I hand over to Gerald and Stefan.
One moment. Okay, can you see the presentation? Yes, thank you very much. Markus, thank you for the impression. It was very interesting. Also, thank you for invitation. So now I will speak economy for the common good, an alternative model for an ethical economy and society. Why an alternative economic system? That's the question. Yeah. I know it's time for a system change, and the question was, we need a new economics system. I know the survey is a bit older, it was after the financial crisis, but I'm convinced it wouldn't be any different today. The following question was asked in survey conducted by the Bertelsmann Foundation in 2010 and 2012. And if you see, you can see that 88% in Germany and 90% in Austria said that we need a new economic system. What is the economy for the common good? I will explain it in a few words. Yeah, our current economic system is upside down. Money has become a self-purpose instead of a means to what really matters, a good life for all. That's what Christian Felber, author of the book Gemeinwohlökonomie, says, a common good, economy of common good says. So I will explain what is the economy of common good. Common good economy refers to an economic system built and values that promote a common good. It is a lever for change at the economic, political, and social levels. So for economic level, a wire level, concretely implementable alternative for companies of different size and legal forms. On a political level, a motor for legal change. The goal of the commitment is a good life for all living beings and the planet, supported by a common good-oriented economic system. And on the society level, an an initiative to raise awareness for a systemic change based on the shared applicative action of as many people as possible. The movement gives hope and courage and seeks networking with other initiatives. It sees itself as an open-ended, participatory, locally growing process with global reach, symbolically represented by the dandelion seeds in the logo. A few words to the history and distribution of the common good. It was founded in 2010 by Christian Felber. Its expansion via Germany from Switzerland, Italy, and Spain to the Benelux country, Great Britain, Scandinavian, and Eastern Europe countries, as well as the USA and Latin America in Africa. In the moment, more than 3,000 companies supported ECG, Economic Common Good. Around 900 of them are members or have already drawn up a Common Good report. In Bavaria alone, I'm sorry, I'm from Munich in Bavaria. Yeah, Bavaria is the main city in Bavaria. More than 2,030 companies have drawn up a Common Good report, approx. If you are interested in watching the video, I added a link for you. Oops. So the idea is constitutional goal even in our country and in many other countries. That means the idea is not new. Yeah, if you see for example in Bavarian Constitution, Article 151, all economic activity serves the common good. In Germany Constitution, Article 14, ownership obligates. At the same time, its use should serve the public good. And for example, in the Article 41, Italian Constitution, public and private economic activity should be directed towards the common good. And all in the Spain Constitution, Article 128, all the wealth of the country in its various forms and regardless of its sponsorship is subordinate to the common good. So you see, it's not only idea from us, it stays in a lot of constitution. What are the goals of the economic good for the common good? You see a realignment of how we define economic success. We stay now at the left side, that is the profit maximization, capital growth, and on the right side, I will compare with common good. Now, GDP, everyone knows GDP provides no information on the well-being of people or planet. Yeah. GDP includes production of weapons, expenses for the elimination of environmental damage. Yeah? But the question is, does an increased GDP tell us anything about poverty levels, income distribution, general health, well-being, happiness of people? We think ECG balance sheet measured to what extent a company adheres to these values. What the common good economy could imagine is a common good product with common universal values. Now, on the left side, you see the finance balance sheet. Yeah, it provides no information about job security, equal pay for equal work, workplace satisfaction. What can we learn from financial balance sheets about? Can we learn about jobs creation? Can we learn about equal opportunity, quality of working conditions? No, nothing there. ECG balance sheet measures to what extent a company adheres to these values. What we wish for, in addition to the financial balance sheet, let us align the measurement of success in the economy to the goals. And how does that look? A concrete tool for companies and other organizations, the common good balance sheet. You see it a little bit before. It is based on universally accepted values. See in the top line, and as Markus has already told, human dignity, solidarity, and social justice, and so on. Yeah, success is no longer measured by money profit, but by the implementation of basic values. These are the same values that make interpersonal relationships successful. Yeah. So we asked, how are working conditions in the supply chain? Yeah, what happens to the profits? How are employees being treated? How is the interaction with customer and competitors? What contribution is made to the community? This is the common good matrix. You see it before. I will explain only with a few words, because Markus has told a little bit about this. It assesses and scores the contribution to the common good. The values shown in the columns are those which promote successful relationships and a good life. Yeah. The rows reflect the 5 stakeholders: suppliers, owners, and social employers, customers, and other companies' social environment, which an organization has most contact with. In the intersection between the values and the stakeholder groups, 20 common good themes describe and evaluate an organization's contribution to the common good. Yeah. The purpose of this evaluation is to show the impact of corporate activities on the common good. In the assessment process, the organization positions itself on a scale depending on how developed each value is in the organization. The process of creating the report therefore promotes the further development of the organization in a way which is value oriented. So how does it work? The common good, or I think essential on this page is to mention the score to be awarded from the baseline. Exemplary is very rare. You have to be so good that you stand up to other companies in the same industry and say, just like us, you all have to do it. The most points, if you have, for example, null points, the organization complies with legal requirements. There are no further measures. I will tell you a little bit later, about more than this scoring. Here, I think it's important to know that overall companies can thus achieve between minus 3,600 and in the best case plus 1,000 points on the basis of your individual assessment. Develop your organization in targeted and strategic manner in the direction of greater sustainability and a focus on the common good. So you see, you can get negative points, for example, violations of human rights, exploitative wages, unecological behavior, and so on. What we can here say, I think on the basis of this assessment, the Economy for the Common Good prepares your certificate which you may publish together with your common good report. How can it work? For example, the self-assessment of the companies is checked and if necessary, corrected either by independent auditors or by peer groups with other companies combined by common good consults. A common good balance sheet reports over 2 fiscal years and is also valid for 2 years at a time. Oh, yes, I say it. That's why common good balancing is the beginning, not the end of your company's journey to more ethical and sustainable operations. I think it is important to say that the common good matrix included in our report at least once or several times the SDGs. What does that mean? If you make a common good balance sheet, you also fulfill all the SDGs, and not only that, but much more profound, precise, measurable, and comparable. What are the benefits for companies if you make the common good matrix primary? You have a 360-degree view of the organization. The contribution to societal change as a conscious actor, organization development tool, and secondary, there are internal effects and external effects. Internal effects, yes, you will see employer satisfaction. That's very important for today. Yeah, employer retention, high attractiveness for applications and talents. And so on, and external effects, for example, promotion, common good ideals, strong. That's very. I think it's very important. Strong supplier relationships, but stronger customer relations, increased sales, and so on, and positive marketing outside. And maybe you can get with this positive marketing if you have an common good, if you have made a common good report, you get new customer and can acquisition new customers. So if you have done it, you are maybe an innovation driver. And maybe you have a greater resilience. The path to the economic good sustainable report, it is possible to do a self-assessment, but it might be interesting for companies to do a quick assessment before actually deciding to do a common good assessment. Both you can do alone. New is the Eco-Good Business Canvas. It is an entry into the world of ECG based on Business Canvas. I don't know if you know Business Canvas. With this basis, you can very quickly map any business model on a sheet of paper, with the only difference that the Eco-Good Business Canvas already ask the entire business with all its stakeholders by asking the right question about sustainability. In the focus report, the company writes about itself and its intentions to increase sustainability. 1 page each for the 5 contact groups, as well as for the short and long-term goals in terms of sustainable corporate development. This is combined by a consultant, and individuals from different companies can come together here. You can then either make a compact or a full balance. The difference is in the compact balance, there are approximately 60 indicators, and in the in the full balance report, there are they are asked to 80 indicators. It is important to mention that you can get on at any point. Yeah, if you will start with the aggregate business canvas, you can start. If you will start immediately with the full balance report, you can start there. 3 ways to a common good balance sheet for companies. First is the independently without ECG consultant. I wouldn't recommend you that. Second, with the support of ECG consultant, and third, for example, in a peer group. I here a few links if you will know much more about this. WINS. Economic common good in practice. I will show you a few companies. Maybe you know VD. The spirit of mountain sport. Yes, VD makes sport, fashion, and maybe you know. I will see. No, I don't know Bioland. Maybe you know. Yeah. What can we say? But I will show you VD. Because many know VD. They make, as I said. Mountaineering equipment and outdoor clothings. That's really a very good here. If you see, that's really a very good number of points. I have to lie, but the average is maybe 300 till 350 points. Yeah, and they have 631 points. 80% human dignity. Here you see 80%, for example, human dignity at your supplier says a lot about the companies. 80% human dignity at your supplier says that means they take a close look at their supply chain. Yeah. How does the certification work? All 20 fields are processed. And these are then weighted and evaluated using an algorithm and output as a percentage. Weighted because you cannot store the same criteria with a producer, dealer, or service provider. Yeah, that because we are here international, ECG at EU. Yes, Markus has told us a little bit of the way, but I will say the Economic and Social Committee of the EU voted in favor of the ECG with a large majority in 2015. This ethical economic, they say, this ethical economic model corresponds to European values and social responsibility. It should be included in European and national legal frameworks. Unfortunately, not too much has happened since then. The mills in politics are turning slowly. Yeah, and we must not forget that we have been living in a permanent crisis since 3 years. The ECG has been a member of the EFRAG, European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, since this year. This was commissioned by the European Commission to develop drafts for European Sustainable Reporting Standards as part of the planned Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directives, CSRD. And on the right side, you see 2017, there was a conference with Bündnis 90 and the Grünen, and therefore 96% approval ECG. Conclusion and further information. The ECG, what is ECG? An alternative economic model, ethical, solidarity-based and value-oriented market economy. It's another way based on private enterprises, but these do not seek financial gain in competition with one another. They cooperate with the goal of maximizing the common good and not the capital. Holistic and universal approach, yeah, a benchmark for ethical economic activity where success is measured through this CG balance sheet for organizations and the common good product for the economy. Yeah, and maybe a concrete political utopia, a vision on what the economy could look like in 5-10 years. What can you do? Ways to get active. Maybe here is the link. If you engage as a volunteer, facilitate as a supporter, maybe, or become a member. Here are further readings. There are books in German and in English from Christian Felber. And last but not least, let me say thank you for your attention. Oh,
yeah. Thank you very much. Sorry? Yeah.
23 minutes. It was okay. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. We are. It's perfectly done. Right on point. Yeah. Now it's time to ask questions from all of you to Markus, Stefan, and Gerald. Yeah. Let us know in the chat. Type some questions down there, or just unmute and ask your question.
It's a good question from Thomas. Yeah. Yes, I think so. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, it's
okay.
Really, yeah, I'm sorry, Max.
No worries, no worries.
I answered. Yeah.
Do you want to answer just straight?
Yeah. It was the first question from Thomas Gressel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He asked, would circular economy be the ideal economic concept for the environmental sustainable part of the common good matrix? Yes, it's part of the common good matrix. I can't say anymore, because circular economy is, I think, the only way for the future. We see it now. We have a lot of crises with the war, and I think that is the right way to think about circular economy. Yeah, much more than we have done it now. Yeah, mm-hmm. Markus, sorry. Yeah.
And Markus raised his hand, so
just also to comment on what Thomas mentioned. As I mentioned before, these new proposals of what it's going to look like in the future is part now of this Green Deal initiative. And so also in this European Green Deal, there's more than just this topic, but also there you can find this idea of circular economy. And apart from the law as it is emerging, personally, I also think that, of course, it has to go into this direction of a circular economy.
Okay. And we have another question regarding the common goods. From Sigrid, how much is it to get certified by the Common Goods Report?
What do you mean? How much time or money?
I think money, yeah.
I don't know exactly.
Yeah. How much does it cost?
How much does it cost? That is different. How large is your company? You can do it for yourself, for your own company, if you're a one-man company, or you can do it for a big company. That's very different. It depends between, for example, a few thousand euros, 3,000 euros till 25,000 euros. Yeah. But one way is, for example, if you do it as a smaller company in a peer group, for example, in a peer group, there are a few companies together and make the report together, so it's cheaper than you make it alone. Yeah, but I can't tell you exactly what it costs. Yeah, we will see if you speak together. Yeah.
Yeah, Sigrid said thanks, so I guess her question is answered. And there is another question in the chat from Moritz Nachschat. I think the question belongs to both of you, or all of you. How can companies move away from the traditional form of capitalism, and how or in what way could the traditional understanding of economic growth be replaced?
Markus, willst du?
Yeah, I think it's, I've earlier referred to this notion of bottom up and opposed to that top down. So now from a law/policy perspective, I think it has to be a combination of both. So bottom up, I think to some extent was a lot of initiatives, POW, Fridays for Future and all of that, which have put this topic on the European agenda. And it's also a combination of different phenomena, but I think it was also the necessity for the European Union to put more focus on what are the concerns of people, and especially the young generation, as also Fridays for Future was very much driven by the younger generation. So in a bottom-up way, that has put the topic on the European agenda. Now it's on the European agenda in terms of the European Green Deal, and of course now that feeds in a top-down way what I've presented to you in terms of legislation, existing one, upcoming one. But of course that also here we have a circular, not economy, but to some extent a circular society, in the sense that if individual peoples and if NGOs also like POW keep the topic ongoing, then of course that will also put more pressure on companies. And of course, and Gerald also mentioned marketing. Of course, that should, and I don't say that that's Gerald's view, clearly not, but of course, there might be some companies who just do it for greenwashing and for marketing purposes. But I think we all also know companies who really do that because they are convinced. And so I think legislation is coming in a top-down way, but some pressure or change of attitudes has also to come in a bottom-up way from all of us. I mean, that's democracy, another value, as we've been talking about values. And so I think it has to be in a hybrid way. And I think all of us, we can make a change. And again, the fact that besides digitalization, the European Green Deal became a major concern for this European Commission, that's due to, I would say, especially the young generation.
Gerald and Stefan, do you want to add something?
So I would say we need a mind change in the consumer for every consumer. And I think to reach this, the ECG is one way. So we need a lot of companies. They are successful. They have a successful way with the ECG balance, so that we can show and we can see that this way works. So I think a lot of people don't believe that a different way than the existing way can work. So I think it's a transition chain. It's a transition process to change the minds of most we can have people.
Yeah, just interested by myself. What do you think? How fast does the companies, the businesses are adapting to that? What's the ability? What's your opinion about that?
So what is the focus of the ECG, of us, the consultants, and of our work? I would say today it's these are the companies, they are willing, not the big companies. So this is an illusion that we can change automotive concern or oil concern or something else. That's at the moment, I think that's an illusion. But the willing companies are more and more.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that already, because I put down a question as well for you, for Gerald and Stefan, and you mentioned already the big players, the concerns. I was about to ask, are they open to ideas of the ECG? Are they showing first interests or something? Because we always know that we have like the very big players out there in the world, the big concerns. They own so many, they have a huge impact. If you watch, like, for example, the American example with Walmart, for example, yeah, they have huge impacts, and especially on climate change. Do they show first like signs to be open to ideas, or really not? Like, is there nothing?
No, not nothing, but not really open. Yeah, they have another ideas. Yeah, the really big one. Yeah, I can. Stefan had said that's only the companies are willing. The willing companies are a little bit smaller, but not the big one. Yeah.
Okay.
We talked with international companies. Yeah. But as I said, they have their own ideas, and it's not easy with them. Yeah.
Okay.
But we will see. Time is going on. Yeah.
Yeah. When more and more smaller companies are changing, so it might have an impact. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, or what I would say in addition also to what Markus had said, is, so for them we need the bottom up situation. Yeah. They need pressure. At the moment, they do what they have to do. They make sustainable reporting if they have to do it. We're talking about greenwashing, things like that. Sometimes it's greenwashing or it's for marketing issues. But when the bottom up functions or goes on, so then also the big ones has to change.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And I have, are there any more questions from you?
No.
I haven't read one in the chat yet.
That is nothing, yeah.
Otherwise, I would have one more to Markus. We talked about the Green Deal, and you talked about it in your presentation as an example. And we all know that the changes we need changes very quick to reach the very important goals to fight climate change. What's your what's your impression, your opinion about the time frame, that the impacts of the Green Deal are able to help us? You know, will it be fast enough?
Well, hopefully. It's a very broad question, so it's difficult to give a very detailed answer, but I mean, the Green Deal consists of various initiatives, some which have been already implemented, and we have some which maybe are more in terms of financing, so funding projects in this field, some more in the field of legislation. Sometimes it can also be useful to issue soft law, so which is not legally binding, but which can also have an impact. So there are various ways how the Green Deal could be seen or measured. I think on a more broader scale, it's not only the EU with its Green Deal, but we all societies, and we have also participants from Switzerland. So everywhere in the world, we're facing this situation that we need to, if we listen to natural scientists, that we need to act very quickly. And the hope is, of course, that that all of the ideas which have been presented will be implemented as soon as possible. If you look at how the European Union functions, it's always driven by crisis. It had started with a crisis, World War II. Whenever there was a crisis, it took the next steps, because, you know, politicians are sometimes very slowly in moving. They are more looking at next elections and not having more foresight. So one crisis which is currently taking place, which could have a positive effect, and of course the war is terrible, but for this topic, is that maybe energy production will become move more towards renewable energy in order to become more geopolitical independent from Russia when it comes to oil and gas delivery. As you've also heard today, that Poland, for instance, I think Bulgaria will not be delivered anymore. So maybe that has an impact. And I mean, my background is in law, but law and policy are very closely related. So it can sometimes be that one crisis overshadows another one, and that the topic gets off the political agenda. But now this crisis, in addition to the climate change crisis, maybe could even give it more of a push, so that we will have faster administrative procedures and other issues. So that not only at the European level, and your question was about the Green Deal, but also at national level, there is more push towards getting more climate friendly, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Yeah. And what would be the most effective way for us as an organization to speed this process, maybe to accelerate, like not wait for the next, I mean, there is a crisis, but there will be other times soon, maybe. Yeah.
Well, I would say to continue as it's done at the moment, to create public awareness. And, you know, there are a lot of initiatives named Friday for Futures. And I mean, there are a lot of initiatives which are all going into the same or similar direction. So for this bottom-up process, I think it's very important to raise awareness. And as I'm working on values, I once also gave an example of the values of POW Austria, which were on the website, and one was get active, so get involved. And I mean, that means for all of us, as we are luckily living in a democracy, to go to vote, and not just to complain about politicians, but to also be part of the change and to be interested in what's going on. And so for individuals and for NGOs like POW and others to continue creating this awareness, because we have a lot of challenges these days, but if we destroy our planet, then yeah, that's maybe a bigger challenge than others that we're facing at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, are there any more questions? Otherwise, I would take this as a great end of our third session of Power of Knowledge, and the conclusion to, get active, get involved, and keep fighting. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for tuning in, for joining our session, and thank you for the presentation. It was very great to hear all these insights, and it helps us to keep working